Hi guys, and welcome back to Booked with Juby. My name's Julie, and in today's episode, we're going to talk all things audiobooks. Okay, let's get to it. So before we start, let's talk about audiobooks. I know there's a lot of chit chat on the internet about whether or not we should count them as reading or not reading. And truth be told, my opinion is do whatever makes you happy. If you want to count it as reading, then count it as reading. If you don't, that's okay too. It's not a big deal. It's your reading. It's your time. So do what you want to do with it, okay? Don't let anyone tell you one way or the other. It's okay. And you're allowed to have a different opinion as somebody else too. That's okay. My personal opinion, I count audiobooks as books, but I don't count them as my reading or towards my reading goal because I like to keep those separate. So I have a physical reading goal and then I have my audiobooks. And so on Goodreads, I actually create my own shelves. So I have my challenge and then my yearly challenge, and then I have my audiobooks, and I break those up by every year. So 2024 audiobooks, 2025 audiobooks, and I put them in there, and that's what works for me, and that's how I like to do it. So, maybe you want to give that a try, or maybe you do it a different way. Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to hear about them. Okay, so let's get started. So the audiobooks today, I picked 5 for you guys today, and I'm sure you might have heard of some of them, but you might not have. And I want you to go in with an open mind because some of them I was pleasantly surprised with, and that's what we're going to talk about. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I had previously read her book, Evelyn Hugo's Seven Husbands, or The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Love that book. I gobbled it up. I could not put that one down, and I enjoyed it so much. So I thought, why don't I try a book of hers in an audio format? And I actually knew nothing about Daisy Jones and the Six other than that it had been made into a show, which I was like, okay, that's cool. So maybe I'll listen to the book first. Well, I am so glad I listened to it as an audiobook because the way they did the audiobook is awesome. This book, I actually think I don't think I would have liked it if I read it, just because it's through so many points of views. It's basically a book that interviews all the band members of Daisy Jones and the Six and all the people around them while they're making this fantastic band. And everyone has their own voice, so it's not one narrator doing, a guy voice, a girl voice. Every single character has their own voice, and there's an interviewer, and they're basically asking them questions, and they're telling stories, and they're putting together the lifeline or the life story of this band. And such a good listen to. Now, when I first started listening to it, I'll be honest with you, I'd never listened to anything like this before. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I like this. This is kind of weird. But, and this is true for audiobooks, I feel. You need to give an audiobook minimum an hour chance. And the reason being is sometimes the voices or the way they talk, it'll annoy you. But once you get over it, and about an hour in is when I normally like, okay, they don't bother me so much. So same thing with this book. I literally was like, this is weird. I don't know how I feel about it. Nope, it's a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend listening to it. And it's really fun, and it was a cool story. I have not watched the TV show, but I do plan on watching it. I have a bad habit of reading all these books that are already TV shows or about to be made in TV shows and then actually never watching them. But that's my goal. One of my goals for this year is I actually want to watch some of these limited series because I do like to see how they bring the characters to life on TV, because it's obviously going to be different because you can't do the same thing you can in a book that you can in TV. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This was my first Alice Feeney book. If you aren't familiar with her, she is like the queen of thriller, psychological thriller. She's got all these weird, cool twists. I've really enjoyed, honestly, every single book I've listened to. I haven't read any of hers, but I have listened to quite a few. This one was my very first, though, and it stuck with me. again, this one's a bit of a weird audiobook, and it's a weird story. But it basically follows Daisy Darker and her Nana and her family as they go to visit their Nana on her 80th birthday, and then all hell breaks loose. Nana dies. All these people start going missing and start dying, and they don't know who's doing it. It's basically a whodunit, but within like a complex family dynamic. So good and fun, which is weird to say about a thriller, but it was fun. And I didn't expect the twist at the end, which was super cool. And it is kind of dark and creepy. So when I was listening to it, I did have a couple like jump scares. I was like, oh my gosh, which was fun. Really, really enjoyed that one. So if you haven't checked out Alice Feeney's stuff before, she's cool. She's got some cool stories. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. Now, give this one a chance. This is just a fiction story. It's not, it's not a thriller. It's not a romance. It's not, it's not so categorized. It's just a fiction story. But with that being said, Meryl Streep does the narration. Already amazing. Like her voice, who doesn't want to listen to Meryl? Like, come on, like so good. But this story is really good. It's about Laura, and she basically is retelling her life story to her 3 daughters. And her husband's also there, but they own this cherry farm, and it basically, and I know that sounds boring, but it's really not, because it goes back to how she was this actress and how she became who she was and how she ended up on this cherry farm. And it really was just a lovely story. I did go and reread some of the reviews after, and I know some people are like, kind of boring, da da da. Honestly, it was just a nice story. And that's what I think sometimes we forget as readers. Like, it doesn't have to be this big twist. It doesn't have to be this huge romance. It can literally just be a good story. And this one is a good story, narrated perfectly, and really just so enjoyable. So don't sleep on this one. Give that one a try. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I surprised myself, and I actually only picked this one because I just needed something to listen to, and I was just swiping on my Libby app, and it was like, this one's available. So I was like, okay, boom, there we go. And glad I did. And I've also listened to some other books of hers, which we can get into another time, but also, like, every story is just, it's good. It's just good storytelling. Okay, so then the next one I want to talk about, and this one is probably my favorite audiobook I've ever listened to in my entire life. It's Remarkably Bright Creatures, and it is so good. Do not sleep on this one. It is a little bit weird at first because there is an octopus in it, and the octopus talks, and that's weird, but you gotta get past it because the story, oh my gosh, it follows Tova. She has lost her husband, and she lost her son when he was 18 years old, and it follows her remarkable story and how she befriends this octopus and how she kind of regains her life back. And I cried. I'm a baby though, so like, what do you want me to do? I cry more than I don't cry. I will easily cry, so that doesn't surprise me. But this book was so good, and the octopus, I can't remember the guy's name that does the voice, but he's so good. And it's not like huge chapters of an octopus talking; they're just small parts, okay? But it sounds crazy. Even though I'm talking to you guys about this, it sounds crazy, but it was so good. And again, just like Tom Lake, like it's just a fiction story. It's just a story, and it's a nice story. It's a heartwarming story. It's worth a listen to, even if you think a talking octopus is weird. Okay, like just do it. I promise you will be pleasantly surprised. And then the last book I want to talk about is actually just the last audiobook I just listened to, which is Lessons in Chemistry. I actually just talked about this in my last video with my January wrap up of all the books I read and listened to. And if you listen to that or watch that, and if you haven't, you can on my YouTube channel, you'll know that I went into it knowing zero about it. It was by accident because I actually was listening to Wicked and I DNF'd it. Don't at me. Go watch the other video. I explain why in that video. So don't at me, okay? I had good reasons for DNFing Wicked. Anyway, so Lessons Chemistry, it was a skip the line copy, and if you have the Libby app, it just here's a notification, like here's a book you might like. I was like, okay. Wow. All I can say is wow. Like, what a great story. It follows a woman chemist in the 1950s and 60s, and it follows her life as she navigates love, being a woman in the 50s, having to fight for herself in STEM, and standing up for herself and standing up for other women, and how she's raising her daughter. And truly, I talked about this in the last video, but like I bawled my eyes out. What's really funny about this is I actually went and looked up the reviews after I finished it. And, I always like looking at the 1-star reviews. I don't know if anyone else likes to do that. I'm just like, why are you giving this a 1? Like, I gave it a 5. But I was looking at it and a lot of people are like, this is under humor. Like, this isn't a humorous book, so I don't get it. And I was like, no way this book is under humor. I go look and it is categorized as humor. I would not categorize this as humor. I mean, there was I guess like funny parts, but like, no, like this was actually a book about grief and overcoming that, and overcoming, particularly as a woman, overcoming like such biases, and especially in the 1950s, and fighting for women's rights, and fighting for justice, and opportunity, and it was sad. So like I just find it funny that they called it humor, because I definitely would not categorize it as that. But it was a really great listen. But there is a trigger warning, there is essay, and there's some really pretty deep, complex issues discussed in this book. So I would go in, if you're going to go into that book, knowing have a trigger warning, because it can be a lot and you might end up bawling your eyes out like me. So but that's all for my audiobooks today. And like I said, I love audiobooks, and if you haven't tried audiobooks, definitely give it a try. You can use Spotify, Apple, Audible, Libby, the Libby app. I don't know, I think they have this in the States too, but it's a library card. Basically, I went to my local library, got a library card, and I was able to use this app for free audiobooks. Like, you can't beat it. I'm obsessed and I've never looked back. So that's all we have for today, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow along for more crazy book yapping. Bye.